Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 25 of Sustainability Simplified, your bi monthly dose of how to seamlessly build an action oriented, sustainable, and profitable business. We're also now the official podcast of the Sustainability Council Network, an international network of sustainability enthusiasts, professionals, experts, and entrepreneurs registered on sustainabilitycouncil.in. I'm your host, Zitin, and today we'll be getting into conversation with the super young, dynamic, and inspirational Mehndi Shivdasani, who's also known as Conscious Chokri. Welcome, Mehndi. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
Hi, Zitin. I'm very well. Let me first say that introduction really boosted my ego, though it should. I will make sure it doesn't get to my head. But thank you, and also
You're
congratulations
welcome.
on being like associated with the International Council. That's really cool. Very well
Thank you
put.
so much. Thanks
Yeah,
so much. Thanks so much. Wonderful. So let's dive in. Are you ready?
let's do it. Let's do it. And I should also say at the top of this, thank you for thinking that I was worthy enough to have a chat with and for taking the
Come
time and
on.
spending your Sunday afternoon with me. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to spend the next hour or so chatting.
Absolutely. Likewise, likewise. Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. Great. So let's go ahead.
Sure.
So please share a little bit about yourself, especially
Hmm.
also about your career trajectory related to the space of talent development for impact organizations.
Sure. So I have been a recruiter since, well, officially a recruiter since about 2013. I kind
Right.
of, the career kind of just happened to me. It wasn't the original plan in life, but it served me well in many ways. I spent a lot of my college years taking my story back a little bit. I spent a lot of my college years recruiting for and volunteering with an organization called ISEC. It's
Right.
basically a forum that facilitates international exchanges for youth and students. And as part of that work, a lot of the activities I engaged in were linked to recruitment and people development. So a very like early interest in that area developed while I was in college itself. That then led me to being hired by one of our clients and partner organizations at the time in the role of a recruiter, first as an intern and then sort of it moved into a full-time role. And I realized that I enjoy this kind of work for the most part. Of course, like every other job, there are certain angles of it that are mundane and you
Yeah.
don't want to do it. But for the
Yeah.
most part, I enjoy the process of learning about another person's story and why they do what they do, what kind of change or move do they want to make in their career forward, and helping facilitate that process is quite interesting. So I started in 2013, and I've been a recruiter ever since. The last 4 years specifically, I worked with a firm called Shortlist, which basically focuses on recruiting for social impact enterprises, nonprofits,
Yeah.
large foundations, lots of startups, largely focused on the India and the Africa market. So
Right.
it's really over the last four-ish years, 4.5-ish years that I gained a lot of exposure to that world. And it all kind of blended really well for me because I had always had an interest in the impact space, even in college and like really early on in life. And then I kind of fell into recruitment. So the last 4-ish 5 years, especially, have been a good space where I've been able to blend and kind of merge my two major interests. People and recruitment and storytelling to a degree, and also wanting to facilitate some kind of social impact and change in my own little capacity. I obviously can't change the world, but through the kind of work that I've been doing, I feel like I have impacted some people positively, and that's a good feeling to go to bed with most nights. So yeah.
Of course. Of course. That's also why you're here on this show. So
Yeah. I think that recruitment is kind of one side to the story, and like helping people find the right talent, but also helping
yeah.
youth and even like late or mid stage career professionals figure out what their skills are, what their stories are, and how to match those two.
Yeah.
Is very interesting, and obviously that those are two different sides of the equation, and they require like different support and guidance. So yeah, whatever I can offer to anyone through this conversation today, I'm happy to do so.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Great. So, talking about what you can offer, we have lots of
Hmm.
questions for you in that domain. So, our listeners
Sure.
can kind of benefit. So, let's move on to the next question, which is, from
Sure.
the perspective of youth preparing for a hiring process, specifically in the
Mm,
impact space, what
mm,
would be
mm.
your top three pieces of advice for them?
Yeah, so when I saw this question, in prep for this chat, I think I actually thought of maybe four things, not three. Is it
That's
okay
fine.
if I? Okay,
Absolutely
all
fine.
right. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is whenever someone thinks about doing like work in the impact space, often there's a really rosy picture in one's mind about how you're going to change the world and it's all going to be so positive and happy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
while that side exists, it's also important to know that working in the impact space is tough. It's hard because you're up against normally a lot more barriers and a lot more challenges working in that space as compared to working in a more straight and narrow, really conventional, professional industrial space. So I
Yeah.
think the first thing that I recommend to anyone, and this is what I do even for myself when I'm starting a new job or starting a new project, I really sit down with myself and like figure out why do I want to do what I'm trying to embark on. So why does
Yeah.
one want to work in the impact space? I think narrowing that down, literally writing in a notebook or on a document, why you want to do what you want to do, and articulating that for yourself, I think then helps really, really intensely and really positively in the rest of the search for, finding the right opportunity and finding yourself a space where you feel like you're making some change and facilitating impact. So I think narrowing down on your why is super crucial.
Yeah.
The next kind of piece I would recommend, and this is obvious, but a lot of people tend either not to do it or not to do it very well, which is to just research the organizations that you're interviewing with.
Yeah.
And that doesn't only kind of go into just studying their website. I think it goes a little bit beyond that. It goes into, if the organization is funded, figuring out who those funders are,
Yeah.
figuring out and looking at the leadership of the organization you're looking to join, studying their LinkedIn profiles, their trajectory, their stories. Often these kind of data points can help you even create a common or a personal connect with whoever you're doing your interviews with, and that always makes a bit of a difference. It shows that you've really done your research, you're invested in the process. So I think researching who you're going to work for or who you're hoping to work for, in terms of
Yeah.
the people and the organization itself, super critical.
Right.
And then I think the next thing is kind of fine tuning your story. I think at the end of the day, whether you're working in a fully profit oriented setup, or if you're working in a profit and purpose impact oriented setup, or a non-profit even, really, all of us at the end of the day, I think, are selling and pitching to each other our stories, right? Whether it's an
Yeah.
organization looking for funding, or whether it's an e-commerce company trying to sell you a product, they are trying to weave a bit of a story to you for you to be able to buy into whatever it is that they're pitching or selling. So I think as individuals and also as organizations, but since we're talking about individuals, it's really crucial to fine tune what your story is and how you're
Yeah.
going to pitch your skills, what you bring to the table, how you're going to present your personality. Really package that into a 2 to 3 minute sort of elevator pitch for
Yeah.
for the initial phases of your interview, and also package experiences and stories that you have collected through your experience thus far. If you're someone who's really early stage, let's say you're straight out of college trying to prep for an interview, look at your previous kind of experiences through college work, through whether it's academic or co-curricular work, and look at what are some of the challenges you've navigated, how did you navigate that, how did you problem solve, because people really want to know examples in interviews about how you have dealt with different scenarios, because uh, ultimately most jobs come down to things like critical thinking, things like problem solving, things like being
Yeah.
organized, project management. So depending on whatever stage in your career you're at, I think looking back at your previous experiences and articulating for yourself and therefore the employer
Yeah.
what those experiences are and pitching that story, I think always makes a difference. And then being succinct in your communication, being really to the point and
Yeah.
not talking in circles. As an interviewer myself for so many years, I think the one thing that really gets me and frustrates me often in interviews is people not getting to the point. So on that note, I will close what I'm saying and pause here and see if you have any follow-up questions.
Sure, no, that was absolutely very insightful, and I wish like I had heard this a few years ago. I would have definitely used it much better. Though I'll pretty much have the same insight to share now, looking back at my 9 year career path. So
Yeah.
definitely super
And
super super useful.
we live and we learn, right? That's the other thing
Of
I
course,
think, to present to your, to understand for yourself and to present to potential employers or anyone that you're talking to, that ultimately
right.
we're all learning as we go. Nobody has all the
Of
answers,
course,
and that's okay. And knowing that, as I think a even especially for like young early stage professionals, like knowing that it's okay to not have all the answers,
yeah.
and asking for help, I think that's kind of another piece that comes to mind with regards to advice or recommendations.
Right, absolutely. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
putting that through. And kind of looking at the flip side a little bit from the perspective
Hmm.
of, let's say, entrepreneurial leaders who are
Yeah.
hiring, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
should they look at? What are the three pieces of advice maybe for them?
Mm.
And I'm obviously
Um,
obviously listening more carefully to this one.
yeah, this was actually trickier for me to think about, which is kind of odd given that usually I am on the employer side. But when I sat down and I thought about it, a couple of things that come to mind. I think the first thing is, when we all start a hiring or a recruitment process, where we're going into the process often expecting to find the ideal candidate, really finding a unicorn who has all of the skills and all of the experience we're looking for. But I think it's really crucial to know that no one is perfect and no one is a unicorn. Uh,
Yeah,
and identifying really at the early stage of your recruitment process, what are the must have skills that you really want this person to have, and then some of the nice to haves, like if they have it, that makes them a slightly more appealing candidate. But in
yeah,
addition to that, of course, identifying what are the trade-offs you're willing to make. So for example, if an organization, let's say, is looking to hire someone at a director level, but you find a candidate who maybe is not director level but maybe associate director level, in terms of their experience and what they bring to the table, are you willing to make that trade-off? Are you willing to invest in someone who has most of what you're looking for, and is hungry and maybe wants to grow and is displaying that desire to grow? Are you willing to
yeah,
make that trade-off to maybe invest a little bit of time in them and help them get to that point where maybe they're director level? So I think identifying what trade-offs you're willing and open to make really early on in the process, it helps set more realistic expectations for you as the employer. And if you're
yeah,
involving a recruiter, or if you have an internal talent acquisition team, it helps set realistic expectations for them as well.
yeah,
Um, that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. The other thing I was thinking about was having employers, and I think people in general, we've got to stop basing people or judging people off of their academic or their previous organization or experience pedigree. Just because someone has studied at X university in X city, that doesn't necessarily imply that they would have all of the smarts or skills you're looking for. That
yeah,
often is a telltale sign of maybe someone's background financially to a degree, or someone's probably ability to communicate or be articulate,
yeah,
because that's often what one picks up from studying at the slightly higher end, let's say B schools or international universities. but
yeah,
just but but because maybe someone has, let's say, studied in a government school or a government college, or a university that's not deemed as high end, that doesn't mean you completely write them off. And I think that's where the requirement to make that recruitment process really even is important. And you do that through assessments, you do that through providing all of your candidates, irrespective of where they come from and what background they have, the same kind of written or verbal assessments, so that you're leveling the playing field a little bit and you're looking beyond pedigree. Because pedigree can take a person only so far. Ultimately, I think it's the desire to grow and hunger and having a growth mindset that really helps a
yeah,
person build their careers and move up. Um,
of course.
and that kind of takes me to my third point, is that I think often recruiters, employers, we get really hung up on wanting to checkbox are must haves or are nice to haves in a job description.
Yeah.
And while that is important because it offers direction to your search for for the employee you're looking to hire, I think
Yeah.
it's most important to kind of place your bets on a person's cognitive ability, their critical thinking ability, their attitude, and whether they have a growth mindset. I think if a person checks these boxes, in my opinion,
Yeah.
then their ability to upskill, their ability to learn maybe the skills that you need them to, but maybe they're not the best at, or their ability to bridge any gap, I think is much higher. Because ultimately, like, a lot of skills are skills that we learn. Most of them are skills that we learn either on the job or through like academic exposure or co-curricular exposure, but those are
Yeah.
learned things. So I think identifying and like zeroing on finding talent who are really hungry and want to learn and want to grow and display the IQ to be able to engage in the business or organization you're hiring for. That's what I would place most importance on, and invest in people, because nobody's born super smart, right? It's all acquired learning, most of it. Some of it is
Yeah.
genetic, but most of it is acquired. So I think as
Right.
employers, it's important to invest in your people, and be okay with that. And if you're in a position where you're not okay with that, where you want someone to come in and like plug and play, that's also fine. But even then, I think realizing that anyone who maybe, let's say, has been a head of HR in X organization, and you want them to be a head of HR in your organization, a lot of the work would probably be similar, but the cultures and the setup of the organizations would be different. So even with
Yeah.
someone who on paper can plug and play into your organization, they also will go through a learning curve. So I think just investing in your people and knowing that anyone and everyone will have a bit of a learning curve is important, I think, for any employer. I'll pause there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for that. That was very, very helpful. And some of those things, yes, I do kind of take into consideration as well when I'm also looking
Hmm.
out, for people to join the team, etc. And it's very it is a harder process. Like I feel like it would
Yeah.
be harder for you to kind of just pinpoint all that and put it down,
Yeah.
and I completely get that. But yeah, it's also a learning curve even for me. Like when I'm taking interviews, I'm
Hmm.
learning so much, and
Yeah.
I also feel like IQ is one thing, and then there is EQ also, right? So
Of
how do you
course.
look
Of
at
course.
those aspects
Yeah.
as well and have a holistic thing, which is those four check boxes which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
absolutely.
ultimately, like, looking at people, whether it's you as an
Yeah.
employee or you as an employer, or
Yeah.
whichever side of the sort of story or the equation you're part of, I think
Yeah.
ultimately considering and realizing that people are a mix of different things. They're a mix of lived experiences, they're a mix of information that they've acquired theoretically, they're a
Yeah.
mix of emotional experiences they've had. And so to consider people as people, whole people who've had so many layered experiences in life, I think is also crucial. And having this empathy and compassion, especially in the world we live in right now, and have been for
Yeah.
the last 2-ish 3 years. I think it's important to show yourself compassion and also show others compassion, because it's even as an employer, like, show yourself compassion, because it's hard to find the right people to help build your
Yeah.
organization, and it won't happen overnight. So
Of course.
being kind to yourself, I think, is just important to engage in. It's an activity and a behavior to engage in, I think, irrespective of where things land with your recruitment. So
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. Totally agree with you on that. So, thanks so much for those wonderful
Thank
insights.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Great.
you.
So, shifting, the gears a little bit for the benefit of all
Mm-hmm.
our listeners, just wanted to kind of
Mm-hmm.
inform them that Mehndi basically runs an inspirational page on Instagram, which is called as at the rate conscious underscore chokri. Do check her
Mm.
page out. And on that note, tell us a little bit about what kind of a movement are you trying to build there.
Movement's a big word. I don't know if I'm building a movement or
I feel
or
so.
you're far too kind. I appreciate you. Uh, well, essentially, what happened is that, like I said earlier, I've always been interested in the impact space,
Yeah.
and growing up, I engaged in, beach cleanups, and camping was a big part of my life. So I spent a bunch of time in nature. And I was always the kind of person who would, pick up litter from the road. But I realized that there was maybe more that I could do, and I wanted to figure out how to do that. So, in the middle of my career, I took a bit of a in the middle of my career so far, I took a little bit of a break, and I moved to Australia for about 2 years. Did a course in social entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and as part of that, I met a bunch of people who were really living these very normal city convenient lifestyles, but were creating little to no waste in their everyday lives. And they were taking on challenges such as buying nothing new for a year. While
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
university, worked very closely with the sustainability office, and my boss at that office, I interned there for a bit. She had taken on this challenge of buying nothing new,
Yeah.
and like 2 or 3 months into the challenge, she found out that she was pregnant, and she still continued with the challenge. And I
Wow.
was amazed by that, and I was super inspired by that. And I also realized that I can't just study sustainability and social impact and not have it seep into my actions or my everyday life. And I just started
Of course.
questioning a lot of my life. So that's where the journey of really trying to figure out how can I live a life that's more aligned, where my values, my intentions, my actions are all kind of aligned with each other. Um,
Yeah.
I began questioning that a lot, and that's where the journey to live a more intentional lifestyle kind of started. And I tried to start reducing the amount of waste that I create. I
Yeah.
then moved back to India, and I realized that there aren't too many people in my friends or family circle, thinking about this actively or talking too much about it.
Yeah.
Back when I started my page in 2017, there were maybe
Okay.
like 10 people on the Indian internet that I could see that were talking about this. And now, of course, the scene has exploded a lot. But
Yeah.
I started the page Contest Chokri with the goal to document my own journey, but also build a bit of a safe space online and offline for people who are interested in this kind of lifestyle or interested in being more earth friendly, environmental friendly. Giving them a safe space to talk about their challenges, talk about their wins, their losses, their challenges, big and small, and everything in between. So Conscious Chokri, the page is it's a personal page, but with the goal to kind of show that, look, if I can live in Bombay city and try and really reduce my waste by about 80%,
Yeah.
um, then so can you.
Yeah.
And as an extension of that, I then also started a community here in Mumbai called Zero Waste Mumbai, where about 100 plus people on mostly a WhatsApp group, and we also do conduct offline meetings, essentially just helping people realize that you're not alone in your journey, and that if you are trying to change your lifestyle, change habits, be more earth friendly, be more human friendly as well as part of that process, then this is a space for you to come and be yourself. So yeah, that's basically stuff that I do beyond recruitment and talent acquisition.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely inspirational and lovely, which is why the word inspirational keeps coming to me when I talk to you all the time.
I should talk to you
All the
every
time.
week, Zitin. Or especially on the days when I'm feeling not my best or I'm feeling quite low, I should make sure that
Most
I
welcome.
just like call you up, and you can say amazing things to me. But thank you. You're
Absolutely.
very kind, and I mean what you're doing also is really really inspiring. And I think
Thank you.
people
Thank you.
looking at business and looking at profit and revenue generation from a sustainability, earth friendly lens is just it's so
Yeah.
crucial, because
Absolutely.
I mean that's what I spent 2 years studying. So I absolutely admire that you're doing it in real time, and that you're
Thank you.
taking your knowledge and spreading it to people who are interested, because it's a complex subject and topic as well, just trying to figure out where do you start, with trying to make any change, because our systems and our structures economically, financially, don't really allow it or enable it very much. So
That's true.
to figure out how to break away from that or create your own system or structure is
Yeah.
is hard work. So kudos to you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Amazing. So thanks so much for that. Let's kind of move, to the next section, and this
Mm-hmm.
is like a surprise section. It's a this or that.
Okay. This is a
It's
surprise section.
I'm
Okay,
just
go
gonna
for it.
like throw in two or three questions, and you just
Sure.
gotta choose, one option or the other.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Let me drink some water in preparation.
Sure, sure. No, it's not gonna be so tough.
I am ready, Zitin. Throw your questions my way. Let's see where we land.
Awesome. So the first one is Sydney, where you studied and you also worked for a
Hmm.
bit, or is it Mumbai? What would you choose? Which is where you're born and brought up.
Oh wow. Can I choose another city? um I mean, if I have to choose between these two, I'd say Mumbai. I'd say I can't even actually say Mumbai. It doesn't roll off my tongue as well as Bombay. So I'll say Bombay because
Yeah,
that's the
sure.
city I grew up in.
Of
But if I
course.
had to choose another city between like besides these two, I would choose Melbourne. I spent a bunch of
Nice.
time there while I was in Australia, and I definitely
Okay.
enjoyed Melbourne more than Sydney actually. But yeah,
Okay.
Bombay, Mumbai over Sydney, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Wonderful. Great. Next one would it be talent acquisition or the recruitment space, or would it be communications and advocacy? What would you prefer?
Wow. The way I'm structuring my life right now is such that talent acquisition and recruitment pays my bills, and communications and advocacy services my soul. But I
Okay.
hope to get to a point where comms and advocacy and simplifying complex concepts, storytelling like
Yeah.
hopefully can pay the bills as well down the line. But right now it's kind of like both.
Okay.
Yeah, one has to feed the other at the moment.
Right, right. Sure, sure. Absolutely. Great. So,
Yeah.
and this is the last one, which is, I
Hmm.
think they do go quite much hand in hand. But if you had a choice, which one would you choose? Would it be like advocating for sustainability or just practicing sustainability first? What would you choose between the two?
Practicing it. I mean, uh, people in my
So,
circles, professionally, personally, will, and that's how it's been. Like
yeah,
if I really, this is what I think my goal in life is, and I realized this during the pandemic. My goal is, and my purpose really in my life is to bridge that gap between intention and action, to do
yeah,
that for myself and to facilitate that for others as well. So if I can act and really live my life the way I want to, which is earth friendly and being sustainable, uh, that I think is more important. The communications around it, the advocacy around it, the encouraging others, like that will naturally follow. And it's happened. I've
okay.
seen people do that. I've seen people, look at me weirdly when I say I compost my waste at home, to now people either like having set up compost bins themselves
Yeah,
or like wanting
yeah,
to learn how to do it.
yeah.
That will that Yeah, I think action feeds into kind of the communications or advocacy piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful. That was a fantastic this or that
that
section.
that wasn't so hard, or maybe I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I'll let you be the judge of that.
No, it wasn't. I told you right up front. I mean, you didn't even have to have that sip of water. Just kidding. Okay,
Hey.
wonderful. So, so now going, to the concluding section. Of course, you've
Hmm.
already dropped a lot of pearls of wisdom, through our conversation. But in case you'd like to
Hmm.
share any other advice with our listeners, now is the time.
Any other advice? I think that ultimately whatever you're doing in your life, whether it's working for a for-profit business or a non-profit or whatever it is, I think really identifying what your why in life is, and that will evolve and change as
Yeah,
you go through experiences. Your why you do what you do at 19 will be very different compared to what that looks like at 29 or 30 and beyond. So I think
yeah,
really like questioning that from time to time, and really identifying whether your why kind of aligns with your actions and your values. I think that's super crucial, and that's an exercise to revisit and to engage in uh, regularly, once
yeah,
every 6 months or once a year, because uh, with the experiences that we have in the world today, which is pretty intense, one's views and opinions change quite regularly. And I think checking in with yourself and then letting that feed into everything else you do in life is important. And I also say that, I guess, because I'm currently actively doing that, so that's what's playing on my mind. But I
Yeah.
think that action of reflecting on your life,
Yeah.
it serves well, is what I've seen for others and for myself as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Very relatable. And I'd probably say the same if someone asked me that. Just that nobody asks
Yeah.
me questions on my own podcast. But yeah, I think we should
we
do something
will
like that.
we will yeah, we
Let's
will
like
flip the
swap.
table soon enough. We will the tables will turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, lastly, how could our listeners really get in touch, with you if they wish to know more?
Sure. I am terrible at checking my DMs on Instagram, but I'm trying to get better at it. If you do want to reach me, yeah, reach me at conscious_chokri on Instagram, or on email, which is consciouschokri@gmail.com. Those are the best places to reach me. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about anything waste related or anything intentional living related. I think as humans, we forget that ultimately we are all connected. Everyone, everything on this planet is connected.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to engage with someone and build and form a connection, because it's the foundation for everything that we do in the world. So yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mehndi, for your time.
Thank you.
I'm pretty
Thank you.
certain, I'm pretty certain that this conversation will motivate a lot of people to start and continue their journey in the impact
I hope
space into
so.
sustainable living, like you
I
have.
hope
So,
so. I hope so. Yeah, it's a hard journey, all of it, all of what you just described, but it it uh, it challenges oneself and opens one's mind up, which I
yeah,
think, personally, I find interesting and valuable. So yeah,
absolutely,
I hope this helps
absolutely.
whoever's listening, and thank you
I'm
for
pretty sure
putting
it
this
will.
together.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Take care. Yeah,
All right,
bye
you
bye.
take care. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. And if you like this podcast, feel free to share it in your network. My one takeaway from today's episode was start and continue with your why. Keep reflecting upon yourself, what your why is, what actions you're taking, and move back to it every few months. I'd love to hear your key takeaway from today. Do share it with me on my socials. You'll find me there on at the rate Zitin Munshi. That's at the rate ZITINMUNSHI. If you found this podcast insightful and you're an aspiring entrepreneur, or you have an operational business but don't know how to kickstart your sustainable business journey, log on to bit.ly/give life to your idea and start your sustainable business journey today. Until next time.